Good afternoon, everyone, and I'd like to welcome you and thank you for your participation in today's Hydrogen Energy Town Hall. My name is Steve Jackson. I'm the Associate Vice Chancellor for Resource Management and Planning, or RMP, and I'm very excited about today's Town Hall, which is the third in our series of sustainability town halls that RMP will be hosting. For today's Town Hall, our focus will be on addressing and sharing information with the campus community on the role of hydrogen in decarbonization and the research and operational developments associated with this emerging technology. For today's Town Hall, we have a panel of subject matter experts who will be presenting information to you, including UC San Diego's research scientist with the Center for Energy Research, Dr. Nguyen Min, our Director of Utilities and Sustainability, John Dilliot, SDG&E Hydrogen Commercial Development Manager, Melanie Davidson, UC San Diego Research Vessel Construction Manager with the Scripps Institution of Oceanography, Zoltan Keledy, and our Sustainability Engagement Manager, Jim Bowser, who will be acting as our moderator for today's Town Hall and who will be managing the questions and answers at the tail end of today's session. We appreciate your taking the time for joining us today for this Town Hall, and we look forward to your input, your feedback, and participation going forward. Jen, over to you.
Thank you, Steve. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Let's begin today by acknowledging the land where our campus sits. The UC San Diego community holds great respect for the land and the original people of the area where our campus is located. The university is built on the unceded territory of the Kumeyaay Nation. Today, the Kumeyaay people continue to maintain their political sovereignty and cultural traditions as vital members of the San Diego community. We acknowledge their tremendous contributions to our region and thank them for their stewardship. Thank you for joining us today. This is the third Climate and Sustainability Town Hall. The video recording and Q&A from our first town halls can both be found on our town hall webpage, which we'll post the link in the chat. It's where you registered for this one today. We collected questions in advance, and you're welcome to use the Q&A function. Please refrain from posting questions to the chat as it's more difficult for us to track them there. It is likely our presenters may address some of the questions that you have posed. We will get to as many questions as we can today, time permitting, or we will follow up with you directly if we are unable to answer your question live, and/or our questions will be posted on the new Town Hall website. To get us started today, I'd like to introduce research scientist and principal investigator for the University of California, San Diego Center for Energy Research, Dr. Nguyen Min. Dr. Min is an internationally well-known expert on fuel cell electrolysis technology for power generation and hydrogen production, especially solid oxide fuel cells, solid oxide electrolysis cells, and related technologies. Over the last 30 years, he has dedicated his research to the development of these oxide and electrolysis cells and new energy systems. His experience covers a full spectrum of industrial product R&D areas ranging from technology assessment, strategy and roadmap formulation, fundamental and energy engineering study to materials, processing and manufacturing development, system design and operation, prototype demonstration, and cost market analysis. I'd now like to turn the microphone and video over to Dr. Min.
Right, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's my great pleasure to participate in this town hall to talk about hydrogen and fuel cell technology for clean and efficient energy for the future. Next slide, please. According to the U.S. Department of Energy Information Administration, or EIA, world energy consumption is estimated to increase about 28% from 2015 to 2040, with fossil fuels being the largest energy sources, about 3/4 of the energy use worldwide. As the use of fossil fuel increases, EIA predicts world energy-related CO2 emission to increase an average of about 0.6% increase per year. Next slide. So meeting this energy growth while limiting CO2 emission require better efficiency and reduction improvements of in the use of energy sources. In addition to better efficiency improvement of the current energy technology and use of certain methods such as carbon capture and sequestration require potential approaches include development of clean and more efficient energy systems such as fuel cell, expansion of sustainable energy technologies such as solar, wind, and use of clean fuels such as, for example, hydrogen, especially clean hydrogen produced from water splitting using sustainable energy. So fuel cell and hydrogen technology can play a significant role in the efficiency improvements and emission reduction strategy for the future. Next slide, please. So hydrogen and fuel cell are closely associated. The primary fuel for hydrogen is the primary fuel for fuel cells. Fuel cell with hydrogen can be used for clean and efficient generation of electricity. Fuel cell in reverse operating mode or electrolysis mode can be used to split water to produce hydrogen. Another feature of fuel cell technology, certain types of fuel cell can also operate on fossil and renewable fuels. Next, please. Hydrogen and fuel cell technology R&D at UCSD focuses mainly on solid oxide fuel cell and all solid state technology operate at high temperature in the range of 600 to 800 degrees C. Our research aims at developing the technology for power generation, referred to as solid oxide fuel cell, or SOFC, hydrogen production, referred to as solid oxide electrolysis cells, or SOEC, and for reversible operation for both hydrogen and electricity production, referred to as reversible solid oxide cell, or SOC. The objective of our research is to engineer material, develop innovative design and low-cost manufacturing processes, and optimize operation to develop a low-cost, high-performance, and lightweight solid oxide technology for a broad range of applications, including future application with the stringent requirements, such as power system for electric aircraft. One important feature of solid oxide technology is its fuel flexibility. The technology can operate on a variety of fuels, ranging from methane, natural gas, propane, alcohol, and a number of other flexibility as shown on the figure on the left. The technology can also operate in reverse mode to convert mixture of CO2 and water into syngas. It's a mixture of hydrogen and carbon monoxide, as shown in the figure on the right hand side. As you may know, syngas can be used as a fuel for power generation or for production of value chemicals such as methanol and ammonia. Next slide. Yeah, so I did mention that the solid oxide technologies can operate at high temperature and can be used for various applications. Next, please. Solid oxide technology, in my opinion, could serve as the base technology for future energy system. I believe that future energy system should have the characteristic of flexibility, that is fuel flexible, operable on a variety of fuel, and compatibility, that is environmentally compatible. Other desirable characteristic of future energy system include capability, that is multifunctional, adaptability, that is suitable for diverse application, and versatile to local energy need. And lastly, but also importantly, affordability, that is cost competitive and cost effective. Next, please. So the solid oxide cell technology has all those characteristics. So I believe that it can serve as a technology for base for future energy system. It's fuel flexibility, capability, and adaptability set the solid oxide cell technology apart from many technology, many other energy technology, and also other types of fuel cell. Next, please. This view graph shows a concept of a clean, efficient, and sustainable energy system based on reversible solid oxide cell technology. This system uses biogas from biomass for power generation. It also uses sustainable energy such as wind, solar, hydro for hydrogen production from water or syngas production from mixture of CO2 and water. The system can be used for a broad spectrum of power generation application and for various chemical production processes. Next, please. In a project at UCSD supported by Department of Energy, we've been developing solid oxide, reversible solid oxide cell technology for distributed system, distributed energy system that can produce about 1,500 kilograms of hydrogen per day, and also can produce about 600 kilowatt of electricity. And this system can be used for on-site hydrogen generation for hydrogen filling station, and then also can provide power for small communities. Before I start, I can't refrain from showing you this. Next slide, please. The solid oxide cell technology that has been developed for hydrogen production has found an application in space exploration. NASA has selected solid oxide electrolysis cell in its Mars mission to generate oxygen on Mars using the Mars CO2. As you may know, Mars atmosphere contains about 96% CO2. And the technology was a successful demonstration for oxygen generation in Mars mission on the rover and Mars rover in April last year, in April 2021. Next slide. So in summary, clean, efficient, and versatile hydrogen and fuel cell technology, I believe that can play a significant role in energy system for the future. You may wonder, these technologies are so good, why not widespread uses? Well, the technology still needs significant improvement in a number of technology area and also in the area of cost before it can be for widespread application and adoption. That has concluded my part of the discussion. Thank you very much for your attention.
And thank you, Dr. Min. I am going to put the link to the town hall website in the chat at this moment. And I'd also now like to introduce the Director of Utilities and Sustainability, John Dilliot. John has been at UC San Diego for 28 years. In his current role, he manages an annual budget of approximately $100 million, which includes a 30 megawatt combined heat and power plant, campus utilities, energy management, purchase utilities, and sustainability carbon management. John is a Kings Point graduate in marine engineering systems and a professional mechanical engineer. Welcome, John.
Great. Thank you, Jen, and always a pleasure to be here and explain our systems and how, in this case, hydrogen can play a role, and specifically, in this case, you can go to the next slide, please, Ole, and really, how we're collaborating, Dr. Min, of course, and other campus researchers in this effort. And it really gets down to us is the research component of the campus and how much that drives our energy use. As Jen said, our combined cycle heat and power plant, cogeneration plant, was really installed to generate steam more efficiently. The electricity portion is really the side benefit of it. And, our campus, that infrastructure is a little bit, almost a, say a victim of our own success. A little different from other campuses that you might hear about, like say Berkeley and Davis. They're going through some pretty large renovations of their heating system. They have a steam system, very inefficient way of heating, where our campus has this high temperature water system that's installed in the 60s, and this is still providing the heat to these research buildings. And the research load really drives us. 78% of our total load is really this high energy density heating load that the laboratory buildings and clinical buildings provide. Really, the success of the campus. We looked at, if our load was just comfort heating, I think this would be a fairly easy problem to decarbonize, but 65% of our comfort heating load is really only 40% of our total load. We looked and studied comfort heating reductions, the way to do that through the heat pumps. All of our new buildings are being designed to use this strategy as much as possible, but it still leaves a fairly large gap of how to provide that high density heating. You can go to the next slide, please. I won't take very long here. When we get to the other presentations are very informative as well. So the hydrogen section is a way that we see to decarbonize our natural gas use, along with a UCOP program of biogas. So we can get to 40, we get 20% secured in biogas now. We see potentially 40% by 2025. Add hydrogen to that, that's 60% of our emissions going down. So we see this as a very viable way of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And I wanted to highlight a couple of the other areas that we're working on. Solar thermal, we see as a very viable way of reducing natural gas use on campus. In the Center for Energy Research, Dr. Columbria's research area in solar thermal. We're partnering with them to look at campus-wide integration and rollout of solar thermal. We're going to be studying that. And also in the energy geotechnics section, Dr. Ingrid Tomac, we're working with for we call deep geothermal possibilities to create that heat. So I think we want to embrace the living laboratory outreach and highlight that of our own campus researchers and continue to develop that, and look forward to partnering with all campus entities that can help out in this. So thanks for your time. I'll turn it over back to you, Jen.
Thanks, John. Next, we have Melanie Davidson, a hydrogen commercial development manager at SDG&E. Melanie is the hydrogen commercial development manager at SDG&E, where she supports hydrogen project development and manages hydrogen-related policy and regulatory issues. Prior to joining SDG&E, Melanie was a senior director at Strategen Consulting, where she served clients such as the Green Hydrogen Coalition and the California Energy Storage Alliance. Melanie has previously held commercial and engineering positions at Proterra, Commercial Energy of California, and DuPont. Melanie holds a BS in mechanical engineering from Rutgers University and an MBA from UC Berkeley. Welcome, Melanie.
Hi, Jen. Thanks for having me. And it's really a pleasure to join UCSD this afternoon. So San Diego Gas and Electric is a regulated public utility. We provide energy service, both gas and electric, to over 3.5 million people in San Diego and Southern Orange counties. And if you could click this slide, I have an animation. We have a really big job to do here at San Diego Gas and Electric because we are at the beginning of reimagining our energy systems across the state to be 100% clean energy by 2045. And so when we think about that, we look at our toolkit, we're going to need all the tools. We're going to need renewables like solar and wind. We're going to need energy storage, and hydrogen is another tool in our toolkit that we're looking at. Next slide. So today I'll talk about some policy drivers, both in California and on the federal level, that are promoting hydrogen and supporting hydrogen as a tool in the toolkit. I'll talk about our Path to Net Zero study, which is informing how SDG&E is looking at the future of clean energy that we're serving. And then I'll talk about some hydrogen projects that we have underway. Next slide, please. So California has long been a clean energy leader in the US. We often take bold energy and climate action before other states and the federal government. And the first box on this slide is a really important one. So under Governor Brown, SB 100 was passed, and the state of California must obtain 100% of its clean energy from renewable sources by 2045. So that means transitioning all assets that we have that make electricity, nuclear, gas, everything needs to be renewable. But what's also implied by this is the fact that we're actually growing our electricity demand in the state tremendously. So because we're electrifying transportation in the state, because we're electrifying buildings in the state, the demand of electricity that we're going to have is going to increase by 4x by the time we get to 2045. So we're going to need a lot of renewables and a lot of storage to support that clean energy future. Another law in California that I want to highlight was passed this fall, SB 1075, which requires that state agencies such as the Public Utilities Commission, the California Energy Commission, and the California Air Resources Board must consider green hydrogen in their decarbonization strategies. So green hydrogen must show up or at least be considered in the toolkit for the future of California's low carbon economy. Next slide. Recently, federal laws have also promoted hydrogen or supported hydrogen. So in 2021, the bipartisan infrastructure law authorized $9.5 billion in funding for hydrogen infrastructure projects. That's a tremendous increase of funding. And it also did something really important, which was define clean hydrogen. And so federally, that allows every state in the nation to be using common terminology when we talk about clean hydrogen. A lot of people are concerned that hydrogen is just an excuse for more fossil fuel. And so what this definition for clean hydrogen does is it defines hydrogen in terms of the amount of carbon dioxide emitted when the hydrogen is produced, and it caps it. So it enables us to begin to have a common ground in which we can talk about hydrogen, because you might have heard terms of green hydrogen and gray hydrogen and brown hydrogen, and the colors weren't really serving the industry. And so we're glad to see that federal leadership there. And then in the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed this summer, a lot of tax credits were announced for clean energy production, including a 10-year production tax credit for clean hydrogen facilities up to $3 per kilogram. So if you are making clean hydrogen from electrolyzers powered by clean energy, the federal government will pay the first $3 for every kilogram of hydrogen you produce. And a kilogram of hydrogen has as much energy as 1 gallon of gasoline. Next slide. Okay, so in order to think about how are we going to get to 2045 with clean energy, San Diego Gas and Electric put forward a study that looked at what it will take to deliver these renewables reliably. What's tough about renewables is that they're intermittent and they are variable. So for example, a day could be less sunny or less windy. And so we might not get the electricity that we need, especially in a time of very high demand, such as the heat dome that we experienced this summer. And so reliability is super important. And when we think about reliability, the way we store renewable energy becomes really important. And hydrogen can be a way to store clean energy. And so what we found in our path to net zero by 2045, how are we going to get this reliable, clean energy future with 4 times as much electricity delivered as we have today? We found that it's really going to be a combination. So if you could hit the slide again, I think the illustration will come up. Great, thank you. It's going to be a combination of clean electricity, clean fuels, and carbon removal. And hydrogen shows up in a significant way with about 20 gigawatts of hydrogen electricity generation in the state to support the reliability requirement, because as SDG&E, our job is to give electricity to the grid at all times and demands. Next slide. So in order to prepare for the future, we have some pilot projects underway that will allow us to understand the many use cases of clean hydrogen, because we need to safely incorporate hydrogen into our electric and gas operations. And there's a lot of cool uses for clean hydrogen on both the electric and gas system. And so these 2 projects are on the focus on the electric side. The first one is at a power plant that we operate, Palomar Energy Center. And that is a gas-fired power plant that currently uses hydrogen gas as a cooling gas for its generators. So today around the world, there's about 120 million metric tons of hydrogen produced and consumed for all kinds of industry. It's very little hydrogen is used to make energy right now. And so that's kind of where we see the tremendous growth of hydrogen happening, is hydrogen as a fuel, but currently it's used as a chemical feedstock and for interesting chemical properties. So we use it to cool our generators, and we said, hey, we're shipping hydrogen on site. It's made from natural gas. Let's make it on site ourselves using solar power and an electrolyzer. And so that's what we're doing. And then with the hydrogen that we make, it'll cool our generators. It's going to power a fleet of light duty cars that our team at Palomar uses to drive to our battery sites and inspect our battery sites. And then we will also be using it to blend with our natural gas to reduce the carbon footprint of the power plant. And then the second project that we have underway is on the right-hand side of the screen, and that is looking at the capability of hydrogen as a long-duration energy storage asset. So in the state of California, we've deployed a lot of energy storage. We have a long way to go, and most of that energy storage is 4-hour lithium-ion batteries. Once you get to requiring more than 13 hours of energy storage, the economics of hydrogen versus lithium-ion batteries start to look really good. And so we're deploying a long duration hydrogen battery, if you will. So we're going to be making hydrogen on site, storing it on site, and then when the project needs to be dispatched to support the local grid, the hydrogen will go through a fuel cell. It's a PEM fuel cell, so it can respond variably, and it can support the grid using clean energy and clean hydrogen without any emissions. Next slide. So when we think about hydrogen on the gas system, there's something I'd like to point out, which is that as you can see on this image, the gas system feeds residences and commercial businesses. It feeds industry. So there's certain industrial processes that really require high heat applications, like making glass, making steel, making cement. Those are going to be really tough to electrify. And then the other thing that the gas system supports is electricity production. So today in California, the gas network is the backbone of the electricity network. And so decoupling those is going to take a long time, and they might not ever be fully decoupled. And so we really need to look at decarbonizing the gas system to support decarbonizing the electric system. Everything's interconnected. And in this transition period, we need to look at all options on the table. As I said, hydrogen is a tool in the toolkit. And so we are a regulated utility. Our regulator is the California Public Utility Commission. And the CPUC has asked us to look at the impact of hydrogen blending on the gas system to say, hey, like, how much can we blend? Is it going to be safe? Is it going to impact materials that we have on the system? How is your company going to train your workers and safely operate this fuel? And so we are putting together a study to investigate the impact of hydrogen blended gas on the natural gas system. Next slide. And so we're really excited to be working with UC San Diego. It's our luck that we have a world-class research university in our backyard, in our service territory, that is a living clean energy laboratory. And it's great to have heard from Professor Min, and we're partnering with the Center for Energy Research on this pilot. And so what we're hoping to learn from our hydrogen blending pilot at UCSD, well, we're hoping to understand if hydrogen can support carbon neutrality in the gas system. And we're hoping to tell our regulator, the CPUC, like, hey, this is going to be a safe way to blend hydrogen onto the gas network. And so what we're going to be doing, next image, is blending clean hydrogen with natural gas up to 20%. So it'll be 20% hydrogen by volume, 80% natural gas by volume, and looking at the pipeline impacts. The reason we chose 20% is because that's in line with the vast majority of literature, as well as practical application in other gas jurisdictions of what's considered safe and will have minimal impact to appliances on the other side. And we'll be working with fuel cell researchers. That blended gas will go into a fuel cell. We're working on finding a new campus location, and the project would likely kick off no sooner than 2024. So thank you so much for letting me share some comments on hydrogen and what SDG&E is working on, and I will kick it back to our moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. Now I'd like to introduce Stephen Zoltan Coletti. Zoltan currently serves as the Research Vessel Construction Manager for the Scripps Institution of Oceanography at the University of California, San Diego. Prior to this position, for the 13 years prior, he managed the multiple research vessels and the research platform FLIP. He additionally served as director of the U.S. Navy's Arctic Submarine Laboratory. Zoltan is a U.S. Naval Academy graduate and a 28-year veteran of the United States Navy, retiring in 2008 with the rank of captain. Take it away, Zoltan.
So, do we have any slides? I learned from a TED Talk that a good presentation tells a story. I hope you'll enjoy my story today. Additionally, a good story should be able to be condensed down to a single thought. And in this case, my thought is we, as the inhabitants of the blue planet, must be on track now to decarbonize maritime fuels as if our lives and the life of the blue planet depends upon it. Next, please. We have many good partners in our project, and a few of them are listed here. Next. The inspiration for my story is the ship that's in the largest picture. To go around the horn here, we have Sally Ride and Roger Revelle. These two ships are owned by the U.S. Navy, operated by Scripps. They are worldwide roaming. The Bob and Betty Beister is our newest vessel, considered more of a workboat. But the major emphasis of our story right here is the Robert Gordon Sproul. That was commissioned in 1981, the exact same year that I graduated from college. So I can tell you that was 41 years ago. And unfortunately, Robert Gordon Sproul is nearing the end of her service life. She's in good shape, she's safe, but she does need to be replaced. Robert Gordon Sproul does an awful lot of good work for us. She is a tremendous workhorse. She does extramurally funded work. She does some work for the Navy. She does work for the National Science Foundation. She's very good for sensor testing. She's very good for research and development, but her primary task is the training of students at the University of California, San Diego, and Scripps. For the 5 years prior to the pandemic, student use grew by 600%. Over 420 students participated at sea in the year 2019, mostly due to the growth of our undergraduate marine biology major. Next, please. So this may look like to you a tremendous good news story because here we have 65 years of worldwide expeditionary oceanography success. Just take a look at that. But it's also a bad news story because for every single mile, we polluted the atmosphere with our ships. Next, please. Certainly here at Scripps, here we have possibly one of the most important scientific works of the 20th century. And the Keeling curve measures a time series of atmospheric CO2 concentrations measured in Hawaii. And it certainly indicates that atmospheric CO2 is increasing, which we know has been driven by the release of CO2 from fossil fuels. If you consider that the Earth is 4.5 billion years old, when you take a look at this graph, you can see the fact that 1/4 of the atmospheric CO2 has been released in just the last 60 years. Worldwide traffic from ships at sea increased by 300% between the years of 1992 and 2012, and it's still going up. So we need deep, deep cuts in greenhouse gas emissions to impact the global climate change problems, and simply making small reductions in fossil fuel use won't solve the problem. We need zero emission technology to become stable against the growth of maritime at sea. Next, please. How are we doing as a fleet of ships? So we have an organization called UNOLS, the University National Laboratory System. Every university that operates oceanographic vessels is represented here. And in the last 62 years, the academic research fleet built 57 vessels. Every single one of them burned fossil fuels. We're approaching 500 million gallons of diesel fuel consumed in these last 62 years. That's almost 10 billion pounds. No, excuse me, 10 billion tons of CO2 released into the environment. And Scripps by itself, Scripps alone contributes 18,000 tons of CO2 per year into the environment. Next, please. So there is an adage to think globally, but act locally. So for this study, we're going to take a look at real quickly. Consider that the effects locally can be extended to thinking about global effects. Next, please. So if you take a look at the top picture, it is well known that California, densely populated, there is pollution on land. But if we normalize pollution on land and consider only maritime effects, then we can see on the bottom left-hand side, this is the effect of nitrous oxides caused by maritime. And then on the right-hand side, we have particulate emissions from maritime. I think everybody has seen the pictures of almost 1,000 ships that were in the Long Beach area during our supply chain problems. And so we can see the fact that maritime has a significant contribution to landside pollution. This is very serious because the Los Angeles basin is home to 19 million people, which is more than the population of all but 5 states in the union. So nitrous oxide, sulfur oxide, particulate matter are considered criteria pollutants by the California Air Resources Board based on their toxicity and relationship to lung cancer and other diseases. So diesel exhaust from our ships causes a substantial risk to public health. So are there any opportunities out there to make improvements in vessel emissions? Next slide, please. Well, certainly. And we well know that the University of California has stated a system-wide carbon neutrality goal by 2025. We see on the picture on the right-hand side, one of our buildings at the marine facilities that we have in Point Loma, completely covered by solar power. Those solar power arrays can carry the entire site's electrical demand unless we plug in the ship, because the ships have a much higher demand for electricity than the site does. We've also made some strides forward. We've already had hydrogen fuel cell use at the facility to reduce the amount of electricity we draw on our ships. And we know already that there are scientific advantages for using hydrogen power at sea. It's very, very quiet, and so that you don't put any noise into sensitive acoustic environments. Zero emission operations will allow sampling of uncontaminated air and water. And then you'll have minimal impacts on the physical and biological systems that we in fact do study. And a nice byproduct of the use of a fuel cell is you get ultra pure water. And water is always of great value at sea to anybody. So again, hydrogen can be produced, as we've heard, from renewable sources. No criteria pollutions come from the use of hydrogen at sea. And fortunately, our collaboration partners assisted us in a study of the feasibility of using hydrogen at sea as a maritime fuel. Next, please. So my boss, Dr. Bruce Applegate, was able to get $1 million from the US Department of Transportation. And so we performed a study. Could we, using technology today, make a research vessel that actually had zero emissions? So in 2018, we participated in a study, and the answer is yes. You can build a ship today, a research vessel highly capable that can produce zero emissions. This is a tremendously capable ship, and it would be a real inspiration to our students who went to sea to say, man, I'm going to sea, but we are not polluting the environment while we're doing it. This ship, next slide, please. There we go. So as we can see, no fossil fuels. When you spill hydrogen, you don't pollute the environment because it evaporates and goes to the atmosphere very quickly. The downside of this ship was this particular ship had a capital cost of $82 million. And the fact that it would need to be 170 feet long, whereas Sproul is 125 feet long. It was a bit more of a ship than we wanted to chew off and bite in one. Just we couldn't afford the cost of this ship. So we really wanted the ship, but we couldn't just afford it. So we went back to the Maritime Administration. Next, please. And we said, we would like to study a smaller hydrogen-powered ship, if possible, and we'll actually use the form and function of Sproul, the ship to be replaced, and take a look at that, if that's possible. So again, and we performed this study just 2 years ago. Next, please. And we found out, yep, indeed, you could do it. So here's kind of the task that we had, is here's the tracks that Sproul actually operates under. We would like to have at least 10 days at 10 knots. So we need a range of 2,400 nautical miles. Dynamic positioning is the ability of a ship to hold itself in place in one spot at sea. And this is tremendous capability, which Sproul doesn't have. So we're moving up in capability. We'd like to be able to make day trips with 30 students, sometimes up to 40. And our California research vessel needs to concentrate on the California coastal oceanography. We would like, next slide, we would like to have a nice array of scientific instrumentation. And so we have already come across, or we've already proposed a ship of this level. So what's the key outcome of our studies? Next, please. Well, we found out for a Sproul size ship, unfortunately, she cannot make it 100% on hydrogen. So that was an outgrowth of this study. We also studied a combination of diesel fuel with batteries and diesel fuel with hydrogen. You'll be able to see here that a ship on hydrogen can go 9 times as far as a ship on batteries. So our immediate conclusion was a hybrid between diesel and hydrogen is the way to go. But our range of 330 nautical miles allows us to do 75% of Sproul's current missions exclusively on hydrogen. So 3 out of 4 times that our ship is underway, she'll be underway on 0 emissions. Next, please. Here's a simple diagram of our approach to maritime power. We need about 900 kilowatts for propulsion. We get 1,000 kilowatts of installed power from 5 200 kilowatt fuel cells. We also get 1,140 kilowatts from 5 diesel generators. The diesels need not run the same time as the fuel cells. You either run one or the other. We need the diesel, again, to get to the 2,400 nautical mile range, but you can get 330 nautical miles exclusively on hydrogen. Next, please. We've already seen today some discussions of fuel cells. The great news is you put in hydrogen, oxygen, you get out a little bit of warm air, a little bit of pure water, and then you get electricity. And we use that electricity to power our ships. Next, please. The good news story. If you did go with hydrogen, you get a 99% reduction in criteria pollutants. We're only going to take credit for a 91% reduction in CO2 emissions, and that's because we'd have to actually use a truck to get hydrogen fuel from the production facility all the way to the ship. If the truck itself ran on hydrogen, which is a real possibility, then you'd have about 100% reduction in CO2 emissions. So we look forward to this in the future. Next. Certainly, if NASA could fuel a ship, well, Scripps could fuel a ship. So we already know the Artemis mission, which is returning from the moon right now, left the Earth using hydrogen. So we say here at Scripps, you know, if it was easy, we'd let Woods Hole do it. But in the meantime, we anticipate we will be able to bunker our ship successfully with liquid hydrogen. Next, please. And so the good news story is in the Budget Act of 2021, $35 million was provided to Scripps Institution Oceanography to build this forward-leaning hybrid vessel. And next, please. We are well underway on our schedule to build. We're 16 months into our project. Our office was established on the 4th of November in 2021. And we've already submitted a request for information. We had industry tell us about what they thought about our ship. We went forward with a request for proposal. We've already selected a designer, which is the Gloston Corporation. And hopefully by 2023, next year, we'll be selecting a shipyard to build our ship. 2024, we're going to start construction. And by 2026, complete our ship and have it accepted by the U.S. academic fleet, and by 2027 be in operation. And I thank you for your attention today.
And thank you. And thank you to all of our panelists for being here today. I invite you to now turn on your video so that we can do the Q&A. We are only scheduled to be here until 1 today, so that means we're probably only going to get through a few questions. My apologies for that, but as we've mentioned, We will be taking all of the questions that we received both during registration and during this town hall and putting them on our website. So we will get those questions answered to you, and we do encourage you to submit any other questions in the meantime. So to begin, I want to ask John, how are the transportation issues of hydrogen being addressed? When transporting hydrogen, there is an expected 20% energy loss associated with its movement. For this technology to be effective, it must be produced locally to minimize energy loss.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it goes to the point of our interest in hydrogen in this, especially this potential pilot project with SDG&E. The transportation issue specifically, sort of trucking hydrogen to the campus, we really didn't see as a feasible way of using the energy source. But in this, the reason why we're considering the project is because it does look at and study the injection of hydrogen blending into the existing system. And when you do that, you eliminate these transportation and these potential 20% energy losses. Part of the blending pilot project is to look at the effect of the blending on the distribution piping in the SDG&E network, something that I think was a question that was raised as well. Potential, what is the potential losses through piping, especially in the polyethylene distribution piping, and pilot project would look at that in detail. Really, the goal of the project is to show that you can safely inject certain up to 20%, as Melanie said. Do a pilot project, look at the pipe, and have a scientific conclusion on is it safe to do.
Thanks, John. And Zoltan, the next question is for you. What is the possibility that all Scripps vessels could be converted to hydrogen?
Excellent question. We saw the fact that the University of California has a plan to be carbon neutral by 2025. And simply buying carbon credits is one way to achieve that. But we can see the fact that the zero emission vessel is a true wonder. So it's simply a matter of capital expense. It can be done. And we would look forward to contributions from those people who are enthusiastic about protecting our planet to insist upon the fact that Scripps operate zero emission vessels. And so we would welcome that as a cause.
Thank you. And we'll have one more question for Dr. Min. Your research focuses on solid oxide. Can you describe how that applies to transportation?
Well, thank you. As I mentioned earlier, a couple of advantages of solid oxide cell technologies is solid state construction and its fuel flexibility. For transportation application, solid oxide cell technology being considered in the near term for range extender for the electric vehicles and auxiliary power unit for trucks. In the long term, could be developed for power system for cars and even for ships and electric aircraft.
Thank you. And again, I apologize that this concludes our Q&A and we were only able to get through 3 questions, but we will follow up with those. I'm going to pass this back to our AVC, Steve Jackson, to provide the final remarks. Steve?
And thank you very much, Jen. Really appreciate that. And I'd like to thank you all for joining us for today's Hydrogen Energy Town Hall. As discussed, please visit our Sustainability Town Hall website in order to view today's video and to view responses to all of the questions, both those submitted in advance and those received during today's Town Hall Live. In addition, we're going to also be sending out a survey to all folks who attended today, so please be on the lookout for that email, and please let us know your feedback and thoughts once you're able to once you receive it and are able to fill it out. And then finally, I'd like to invite you to join us for our other planned town halls as part of this sustainability series, which will be forthcoming later in the academic year. So again, thank you very much for attending today's town hall and hope you have a great remainder of the day. Goodbye.